Jin is a miserable loser who transfers to a school full of animals that he hates. However, when he realizes the only human girl doesn't want his micro sausage, he rizzes up animal girls who want to get wild with him instead. It all begins on Jin's first day when he joins the school assembly, which is nothing but pure chaos, and his face is target practice. When he gets mad, he throws a pineapple for revenge, but ends up hitting an innocent wolf girl named Ronka. Ronka tries to retaliate, but flies right past Jin and smashes into the principal's fish tank. Just then, Vice Principal Gigasu shows up and threatens to eat everyone if they don't fall in line. When the students comply, the principal tries to give a speech till his tank breaks and Ronka uses him as a chew toy. Later, during lunch, Jin wishes all the animals would go extinct so he can get some peace and quiet. He then heads to the cafeteria, but all the options are either grass or raw meat. After picking his poison, Jin finds a quiet table to join, but it turns out to be Ronka's table. She immediately gets aggressive, thinking he wants to steal her food, so Jin offers his meat as a peace offering. After Ronka eats his meat, she announces that she's letting Jin join her pack. Jin tries to ignore her by gobbling his own meat down, but Ronka continues to pester him, so he throws her a bone to fetch. Suddenly, another girl shows up, but this time, it's a human girl named Hitomi who asks to join him for lunch. Jin gladly welcomes her, so she explains she brought her own homemade lunch because the school's menu would probably end her life. Jin agrees and they both laugh over it together, so Jin wishes all the other animals would get snapped by Thanos so he can stay with Hitomi forever. Just then, Ranker returns to the table and tells Hitomi that she'd have to fight her if she wants Jin for herself. Jin tries to protest, but Hitomi apologizes for interrupting something and runs away. After Jin watches her leave, he insists he's not part of her pack of dogs, so Ronka explains she's a wolf, but Jin points out that she's a lone wolf and has no pack in the first place. When Ronka gets upset, he calmly explains that he's a human, and everyone in school only hangs out with their species, which means they can't be friends. However, Ronka insists it's not true because a human saved her a long time ago. Back when she was little and getting attacked by bears, a boy showed up and tried to protect her, which is something no one in her pack had ever done for her. Ronka then explains that from then she thought she could form a pack with different animals in it, but tells Jin to forget it and runs away. Later, Jin remembers Ronka's words and realizes he was the boy who saved her all those years ago. However, he ended up getting beaten up by the bears and hated animals ever since. Since Ronka kept licking his wounds even when he told her to stop, he figured he could never have an understanding with animals. The next day during lunch, Hitomi walks up to greet Jin again, so they end up outside, and she tells him her idea to start a cooking class. Jin praises her idea, and they both end up laughing together till Ronka shows up and challenges her to a fight over Jin. Jin immediately tells Ronka to beat it since he's talking with Hitomi, so Ronka asks if he's formed a pack with her. When Jin insists he's starting a cooking club with Hitomi, Ronka crawls away sadly. Later, Jin helps Hitomi with some kitchen equipment when they notice Ronka working as a pack mule for a horse girl called Kuro. The entire school laughs at how pathetic Ronka looks till she collapses from the weight. Just then, Kuro tries to whip her till Hitomi calls out for her to stop since they shouldn't treat friends that way. At this, Kuro tells her that Ronka is the one who begged to be a part of her pack, so she let her join as a pack mule. Ranks tells Hitomi not to worry since it's part of her job, but angers Kuro when she says she'd rather be in a pack with Jin. Even though she knows what it's like to be alone, she's happy Jin gets to be in a pack with a human. Jin is touched by her words, but Kuro gets annoyed and tries to discipline her till Jin stops her. Kuro demands to know what his problem is when she sees the serious look on his face and immediately decides to fire Ronka, claiming she wasn't fit to be a noble horse. When Jin asks what gives her the right to talk like that, Kuro's lackeys explain that Kuro is a rare horse with stripes called a zebra. However, reality shatters when Jin explains that zebras are actually donkeys. When she spots the donkeys nearby, Kuro goes into intense denial and insists there's no way to prove it. At this, Jin simply lifts up her skirt and shows everyone her tail, which is only fluffy at the tip, just like a donkey's. Embarrassed, Kuro runs off, and Ronka looks to Jin as her hero. However, when he turns back to look at her, she runs off too. Later, Hitomi finds Ronka sulking in the corner, but Ronka tells her she doesn't need sympathy. Suddenly, 3 bears show up wanting to know what Hitomi tastes like, but Ronka tries to protect her. The bears laugh and ask why Ronka is bothering at all, but Ronka insists it's because she's in a pack with Jin. The bears call her pathetic and grab Hitomi. But before things get PG, Jin shows up and sprays them with bear spray. Ranka runs to hug Jin, but out of nowhere, one of the bears smacks them aside and explains that they simply washed the bear spray out of their eyes. At this, the bear tries to attack when Ranka suddenly goes full wolf mode and rushes to protect Jin, but the bear swats her aside like a bug. Luckily, Gigasu shows up and threatens to make the bears extinct, making them run for their lives. After, Hitomi goes to make sure they're okay, and when Ranka sees how much she gets along with Jin, she decides to remove herself from the picture. However, before she leaves, Jin thanks her for the assist and agrees to be in her pack. At this, Ranka jumps on him and kisses him till his face is drenched in wolf DNA. Jin tries to convince Hitomi that it's not what it looks like, so Ranka jumps Hitomi too and welcomes her to the pack with a sloppy one. The next day, Jin tells Ranka they'll be testing her to see if she's good enough for the cooking club, and if she can't cook something tasty, she's out. Suddenly, a koala girl named Komori comes out of nowhere and says she wants to join the club too. Jin points out that koalas eat eucalyptus, so Komori admits that it's all they ever eat, which is why she wants to try something different. Jin figures it's about the experience, but Komori reveals that she's actually searching for something that she ate before, but it was so long ago, she doesn't remember what kind of food it was. Hitomi asks if anyone in her family would know, but Komori explains that her mom had gotten violent when she asked and refused to tell. When Jin agrees to let her try out, Komori immediately starts slicing, dicing, and frying till she makes a decent eucalyptus pasta. Hitomi and Jin are surprised by how delicious it tastes while Ranka throws away her pride to eat it. However, Jin realizes his plan to keep everyone out with the test had backfired. Next, Hitomi suggests they help Ranka with her test since she doesn't have any experience. Jin initially dreads the idea till Ranka asks for his help. Meanwhile, Komori asks Hitomi if she really doesn't mind Ranka taking her mail, since there are no other humans and they should clearly be a couple. Hitomi quickly explains that Jin is nothing but her ugly friend, making him cry. Komori then concludes that Jin and Ranka must be an interspecies couple, so Jin plans to get rid of her one way or another. He then tells Ranka she can handle the rest however she likes because as long as she makes it with love, it will taste good. The idiot falls for it and decides to give it her all, which looks like she's attacking the vegetables. The result is a meal so disgusting, it had to be blurred for your safety, but Jin insists it's the result of Ranka's love. He then breaks the news to Komori that if she wants to join the club, she'll have to finish eating the whole plate. When the girls ask why, Jin insists that they can't allow a picky eater since they all cook for each other. Hearing this, Ranka then tries to feed the radioactive waste to Jin too. Meanwhile, Komori starts to question her conviction while Hitomi takes a picture of the rare abomination. However, Komori realizes that something feels familiar about it, so she takes a bite and announces that this is what she's been searching for. Apparently, young koalas need to eat undigested eucalyptus directly from their mother's back door, so they can develop the necessary toxins to digest it. Surprisingly, Komori continues to eat the delicacy, so Hitomi announces that Komori and Ranka have passed the test. However, as the girls try to feed Hitomi and Jin literal poop, a creepy cat watches from outside. Later, Hitomi says she'd like to visit the vegetable club to ask for supplies, so they all agree it's a good idea, including the stalker from before, Sora. Komori recognizes her as the 3-year winner of the Miss Female pageant at the school, so they all ask what she's doing there. Sora says she's not interested in joining the club, so Jin insists she get out, but Sora releases a brainwashing purr that makes Komori and Hitomi disagree with Jin and welcome her to watch. However, Ranka and Jin don't get affected, making Jin wonder what's going on. Later at the vegetable club, the boar in charge says he can't give out any vegetables because it seems someone has been stealing their crops recently. But since boars have poor eyesight, he can't tell that it's his own club members. Hitomi wonders what they could possibly do, so Sora walks up to the boar and uses her brain-washing powers to convince him, but it also works on the thieves, who confess. Hearing this, the main boar gets mad and chases off the little runts. When they return to the cooking club, Sora continues to steal Hitomi and Komori's attention while Ranka realizes she's the Sakura of the club. Sora then spots Jin and goes up to him to ask if he's Ranka's boyfriend. When Jin denies it, Sora bumps his nose with hers and claims that's how cats say hello. She then calls everyone's attention and suggests they quit the cooking club to start a napping club with her. Unfortunately for her, her brainwashing doesn't work as they all love the cooking club already. Sora can't believe her purrs didn't work, so Jin tells her to leave if she wants to nap so bad. Sora then storms out, claiming that she never wanted to join anyway, but Hitomi gets sad that they lost a potential member. The next day, Ranka tells Jin she found a new member for the club while she licks him against his will. However, when he goes to a classroom to meet the girl, he thinks she's a corpse. Ranka introduces her as Miyubai, a sloth girl who eats her own moss to survive, but when she asks Jin if Miyubai can join, he immediately refuses and tries to walk away. Suddenly, one of the dinosaur teachers shows up and asks them to take Miyubai to her dorm since they're her friends. When he threatens to step on them, they quickly agree and tell Miyubai to come with them. Miyubai moves in slow motion and tries to stand, but drops to the floor and dies. Frustrated, Jin helps carry her to her dorm, dumps her on the bed and tries to leave when Ranka begs him to help carry her to the club the next day. Jin then points out that sloths barely eat anything, so it would be torture for her to join the club. Ranka gets annoyed and starts stripping Miyubai, claiming she asked for a bath, so Jin tries to convince himself he doesn't care about seeing animals without clothes on. Suddenly, Ranka runs off to get soap and leaves Jin to watch Miyubai when he realizes she might die inside the water. With no other choice, Miyubai pulls her from the bath and helps clean her up while Sora watches with a nosebleed. Once Jin is done, Miyubai activates her time 8 speed and uses it to serve him tea as thanks for letting her join his club. Apparently, Ranka had told her they were super nice and would gladly let her join, so she's not alone anymore. However, when she says how happy she is, she gets exhausted and dies. Just then, Ranka returns with Hitomi and Komori, who figure that who couldn't help himself around a girl without clothes. Jin then announces that Miyubai can join the club since it would make Hitomi happy anyway. When the girls rejoice, he calls out to Sora to show herself and stop stalking them. But Sora claims she was just passing by to take a nap. Jin calls Cap since Sora's tail has been straight up the entire time, showing how she feels. However, Sora denies wanting to join their club and runs off on her own. The next day in the club, Hitomi tells the guys they received a ton of veggies from the president, who said they now have first dibs. She then tells Jin they might have one new member as they notice Sora's tail stalking them through the window. Moments later, they all sit to eat a curry sauce made from the vegetables, but because Miyubai isn't used to new food, she dies. The next day, the school's council president, Mickey, tells the students to report any unnatural interspecies relations, warning that a certain group might already be doing this. After the assembly, Mickey returns to her lair where she rips off her clothes and rejoins her clothless mole rat brothers who treat her as their queen. Mickey laments having to wear clothes in front of everyone, which she finds humiliating, but the other rats assure her they saw nothing. Mickey then asks for a report on the cooking club, so the mole rats begin to show footage of them filming up Hitomi's skirt while she runs away. Next, they show Miyubai, who dies. After, they show Komori on yet another hunt for delicious food, but when they ask what the most delicious thing she's eaten is, she says it's her mom's waist. Mickey asks if that's it, so the rat mentions that Sora is a ghost member but warns that she's a cat. Mickey understands but wonders how the unholy group was formed in the first place, so she asks about Jin and Ranka. The rats warn her that her heart might give out from the shock, but Mickey insists on doing her duty. When she sees the footage of Ranka's tongue on Jin's body, she barely keeps it together. She then declares the source of the evil is Jin, who's trying to build a multi-species harem, and tells her men to get evidence of it. Later, the rats record as Jin cooks alone with Hitomi, but when he loses focus to daydream, Ranka shows up to lick his face. Jin warns her that Hitomi is the most important in the cooking club, but Ranka simply switches to licking her too. Jin rushes to get Ranka off her when a group of lionesses suddenly appear and demand to know who Jin is. When Jin asks what they want, they grab him and try to leave, but Ranka insists that they can't because he's her partner. However, they just grab her too and leave. Moments later, they arrive before the top lion at the school named King. Jin tries to confront the budget Mufasa on what's going on, but Ranka keeps butting in with her big mouth. The lionesses try to keep them both in line, but King asks them to release them because he figures Jin is the kind of man he thought. He then orders Jin to follow him while the lionesses carry the big back on his throne. Outside, King shows Jin an impala named Shiho as she practices her long jumps. Confused, Jin asks what's special about her, so King confesses that she's his desired partner. When Jin reminds King that he's a lion, King points out that Jin is the only one who has an interspecies relationship, which is why he asked for his help. Ranka immediately suggests they help him, but Jin tries to leave the foolishness when he gets attacked by the lionesses. As Jin gets beaten to a pulp, King begs for his advice. Later, the disfigured Jin reminds King that Mickey is cracking down on unnatural relationships, but King insists that his feelings rose naturally in his heart. At this, Jin asks what made him fall for her, so King explains that a few days ago, while he was hungrily waiting for his lunch, he looked outside and saw Shiho, and it was love at first sight. Jin tells him that it was just hunger, but King insists that it was something more. Hearing this, Ranka asks if he's told her how he feels yet, so King laments that he's tried several times, but there was no escape from his harem. Jin immediately demands that he go see her himself and wonders how he even managed to get a harem. At this, King reveals that his only function is to defeat other lions seeking to take his harem. Jin asks the girls if they're just there for his strength, but they explain it's more of his mane that drives them crazy, so if anything were to happen to his hair, they'd abandon him for the milk store. Just then, Jin demands that King goes to Shiho himself, so King sucks it up and leaves with his harem. Ranka wonders if things will really work out, but Jin assures her King is doomed. From then on, King tries to approach Shiho, but only scares her away because he looks at her like she's dessert. When Jin sees how badly it's going, he insists that different species of animals can never be a couple. The next day, Jin tells King to give up, but he starts crying at the thought of his rejection. Suddenly, another lion shows up to challenge King, and he dangles Shiho as a hostage. He demands King's harem in exchange for his dinner, but King refuses to give them up. Just then, 3 more lions gang up to attack the Lion King, but when one of them brags about eating Shiho, King goes Super Saiyan and knocks the idiots out of the classroom. He then approaches Shiho and the challenger, threatening to attack, but suddenly uses his claws to rip out his own mane. At this, he tells the Scar wannabe to leave Shiho since his harem will leave him, and sure enough, the girls dump him immediately. After King apologizes for getting Shiho dragged into his mess, so Shiho asks what he wanted to talk about. King confesses that he wants to be her partner, but Shiho explains that she's not in heat and asks if they can just be friends without benefits. King agrees, and Jin is surprised that King actually bagged the girl, sort of. The mole rats show Mickey the happy ending, but she insists that Jin is now helping other animals form unnatural relationships. Because of this, she instructs her rats to bring Jin to her, but they later report that Jin refused to go anywhere with talking rodents. With no choice, Mickey reluctantly wears her clothes and heads over to the cooking club. On the way, Sora spots them, so her men decide to sacrifice themselves to protect her and her mission. When Mickey arrives at the club, she strips off her clothes and accuses Jin of being a man of culture and creating unnatural harems. Jin denies the allegations just as King walks in and offers to give him harem tips in exchange for his help. At this, Mickey declares the cooking club disbanded, but Hitomi asks her to reconsider since they just wanted to cook. Mickey tells her to kick any non-human member out of the club, and Jin is delighted to hear this till Ranko walks in with the mole rats, who say she rescued them. They beg Mickey to reconsider since the club members are apparently just friends, so Mickey agrees but insists they'll be watching them closely as she leaves. Because of the loss of the king, his throne sat empty and gave birth to the biggest territorial battle in the school. However, that morning, Jin went to school with Ranka on his leash when she suddenly realized she was his pet. Jin insisted there was no other way he was going to walk with her to school, so she began to bug out. Later at the cooking club, Jin asks Ranka why she doesn't join the territory war, but she insists that her territory is wherever he is. The group figures the war isn't a big deal if the teachers haven't stepped in. But Komori reveals a rumor that the new king will receive 100 years worth of food and do whatever they want. Jin says they're just dumb rumors, but Miyubai insists there's one that might be true. Apparently, a student from another school is making their way down to their school, which is why they've been finding carnivores buried in the walls around campus. Komori insists their school is clearly the target, so Ranka promises to protect them all as the leader of the pack. When Jin reminds her that she couldn't even defeat a bear, Ranka insists she'll grow stronger like her older sister. Hitomi then asks where Ranka's from, so Ranka says she came from up north, where temperatures are -20 degrees. Whenever she was cold, her sister would let her wear her coat. However, when Ranka wanted to move away and start a pack of different animals, she had a fight with her sister, and they haven't spoken since. Meanwhile, a pack of wolves watches from the outside and reports to her sister, Feral, that it's really Ranka. Feral worries that Ranka might not recognize her when she sees her. but the wolves assure her she didn't leave that long ago. Suddenly, they all notice Jin pushing Ranka away, so Feral promises to make anyone who's rude to her sister pay. Jin soon finds himself surrounded by the pack, while Feral grabs Ranka and exchanges mouth fluids to greet her. When Komori points out that Feral's pretty big, Jin explains that animals that live in cold areas grow larger to maintain their body heat. Feral probably got bigger since she kept lending Ranka her coat. Hearing this, Feral turns away to cry happy tears that she can finally be proud of her size. Then she calls Jin a promising chimpanzee. The girls wonder if Feral is there for the territory war, but Feral says she just wants Ranka to come back home with her. Ranka refuses to go back and explains that she started a new pack with Jin as husband and wife, so Feral gets mad and blames Jin for forcing her sister. However, when Ranka insists Jin is important to her, Feral plans to make him part of her pack by sticking her tongue down his throat. At this, Ranka threatens to never forgive Feral if she does anything to any of her friends, so Feral gets mad at Ranka for defying her and tries to attack till Ranka says she'll hate her if she doesn't leave. Feral immediately flatlines and has to be carried out by the rest of the pack, while Ranka laments having to deal with her sister's lunacy. Meanwhile, Shiho breaks up with King so she can concentrate more on her practice. Then she runs away, leaving King heartbroken. At the same time, Feral stuffs some carnivores into the walls when a hyena named Yina shows up and demands to know if they're the ones who've been messing with their school. The wolf explains that they were only defending someone, but Yina says she wants to fight the strongest. As they prepare to face off, Feral hears her sister nearby and runs off to hide, making Yina wonder what's so special about Ranka to scare off that huge monstrosity. Suddenly, a pack of lions shows up to challenge them since they scared off the giant wolf. Ranka tries to defend Jin, but the lions laugh in her face and tries to attack, but Yina takes them down first. Apparently, hyenas are excellent hunters and the only carnivores that can beat a lion in a fight. As Yina wipes the floor with them, some female hyenas cheer, which annoys Yina. She then goes to confront Jin about needing a female like Ranka's protection, so Jin points out that Yina is a female too. The other hyenas worry that Jin might lose his life for revealing the taboo truth, but Yina just walks off in denial. Later at the cooking club, Jin finds Yina sniffing Hitomi and angrily asks what she wants, so Yina insists that she won't leave till Jin admits that she's a male. Jin quickly admits she's male to get rid of her, but Yina doesn't buy it, demonstrating her amazing jaw strength by showing what she can do to a large hard bone. Jin points out that female hyenas can do that too, so Yina threatens to squash him like a tomato, but goes speechless when Komori does the same with a watermelon. Yina then plans to break something harder and hands it to Miyubai, but when she grabs it, she dies. Jin accuses Yina of being a murderer with outdated beliefs on what makes a male, so Yina climbs on the table and decides to pull out her last resort. Meanwhile, the mole rats report to Mickey that Yina is starting a war, so Mickey insists that they have a responsibility to protect all students and asks for the footage. However, they witness Yina trying to take off her pants for Jin, insisting that it won't hurt. Meanwhile, Yina says she can show proof that she's a male and remembers being teased by other hyenas for being female. When she returned home, her dad apologized that he could only afford to give her male hand-me-downs, so Yina said she hated her face. However, that day, her dad reminded her that she looked like her late mom, who could even beat a lion. Back in the present, Jin breaks the news that even female hyenas have BBCs.
Huh?
So it wouldn't prove anything. Suddenly, Yina remembers all the conversations with her family and realizes she really is a female. Everyone in the club cheers her on for finally escaping her delusion, but Yina insists they're all lies and runs out crying. After, Ranka tells Jin how nice he is and jumps on him to lick his face. Outside, as Feral watches, she's glad Ranka is doing okay, but still wants to murder Jin. Komori points out that Feral was apparently still stalking them, so Ranka demands that she go home or else. Some days later, the school announces a field day, so Ranka gets excited for their club to participate, but everyone else bails since they're sure they'll lose. However, when Ranka is left alone, Miyubai tells her she'd like to compete, so Ranka promises to be there with her every step of the way. Later, Ranka and Miyubai try to practice for a three-legged race, but after just one step, Miyubai falls and dies. Suddenly, the mole rats show up and point out that Miyubai's rear was squishing one of their men. After freeing him, they explain that they're performing maintenance on the school grounds, but they keep running into accidents. Ranka then offers to help them out, which would also serve as training for Miyubai to build stamina. Unfortunately, Miyubai is excruciatingly slow, but when they remember the debt they owe Ranka, the rats agree to work together. However, when Miyubai just keeps dying, they realize they're making no progress. Later, Hitomi and Jin head toward the field, and Jin wonders if Hitomi wants to confess, but she actually just shows him Ranka and Miyubai secretly training hard for field day. Somehow, the mole rats were also inspired to get their job done when they saw Miyubai's refusal to give up, so they wish Miyubai luck in the competition. Seeing this, Hitomi tells Jin they just have to compete. The next day, the animals get fired up, including Ranka, when Kuro suddenly walks up as pretentious as ever. Jin points out her new donkey crew, so Kuro blames him for her fall in fame, but brags about being a world champion in a donkey card game. However, when she mentions the plan to win the field day, Kuromi tells them they need at least 5 members to form a group, ending all hope. Just then, Miyubai shows up at normal speed, and everyone wonders how it's possible, but Miyubai says she just woke up like that and is ready to win the games. Moments later, she drops and dies again. After, they take her to the infirmary where the doctor confirms that she has a mild cold, which increased her heart rate and made her faster. The team advises Miyubai to rest, but Miyubai insists she can finally help the team in her state. However, Ranka tells her that all that matters is Miyubai's health and promises to give her the gift of victory. After the students gather and Mickey announces the field day open, Ranka prepares to compete in a race with a cheetah and a horse. However, all 3 animals get taken out by bananas thanks to a cheating chimpanzee named Pan. Jin gets mad, but the chimpanzees mock them as they continue to win every single race with cheating. Eventually, the chimps score 150 points while the cooking club has 0. Ranka gets upset about the results and throws a tantrum while those ugly mofos keep grinning at their success. Ranka considers giving up, but Jin convinces her to get herself together and give Miyubai the gift she promised. Touched, Ranka jumps Jin and thanks him for the encouragement. Next up is an athletic race that earns the winning team 300 points, so Kuro and the donkeys hand out maps, while Kuro laments not getting the chance to earn a club room. Jin then shows up and tells the donkeys to participate in the race, but when they almost give up in the snow, Jin tells them that Napoleon was able to cross the Alps because he was riding donkeys. With this, the donkeys get a boost and surpass the chimps. Next, there is an arm wrestling match, so Komori goes up against a gorilla and wins due to legends saying her grip strength is up to a ton. Meanwhile, the chimps get annoyed that the humans are catching up, so Pan suggests they do something about it. Later, Hitomi prepares for the swimming course, but when the girls worry about it, she plans to do her best since Jin was also out there on the 3rd course, turning into a mummy to win the race. On the other hand, Hitomi gets ready to swim when the chimps show up and drug her with a sleeping gas. Later, Jin arrives at the infirmary as a zombie but snaps out of it when he hears that Hitomi is in trouble. The doctor tells them they found her asleep next to a cloth, so Komori recognizes it as herbs used to form sleeping drugs, meaning the chimps were behind this. When they try to decide on a replacement, Komori goes to sleep, and Jin says Ranka needs to preserve her strength for the last course. At this, Miyubai gets out of bed and offers to swim. Jin points out that a sloth couldn't possibly swim all that way, but Miyubai insists that she wants to be helpful to all of them and swim all the way. Moments later, the swimming race begins, and the crowd is shocked to see Jin carrying Miyubai to compete. They all assume she'll drown, and she almost does when she starts waving to Ranka. However, the chimps watch and acknowledge that sloths are good swimmers, but they plan to sabotage her. Jin worries that Miyubai would never be able to finish, but Ranka insists that they trained hard for this moment and asks Jin to have faith in Miyubai. Suddenly, Pan shows up with that fugly face and a boat. Then she tries to wipe out Miyubai as she takes the lead. Miyubai starts to sink, so Jin tosses a buoy for her to grab on, but Miyubai ignores it and carries on with the race. At this, the rest of the students figure Miyubai might actually be able to pull this off, so they all begin to cheer her on to keep going, including the wolf pack hyenas and the mole rats. Miyubai stupidly stops to wave and starts to sink, so Jin threatens to end her life if she drowns and doesn't finish. Moments later, Miyubai arrives at the other side, and Ranka pulls her out to lick her congratulations onto her. Jin commends Miyubai on making it to the end, then she dies as usual. After Jin signals Ranka to bring the win home, so she runs off and catches up with Pan, since wolves are masters of the hunt. Pan plans to cheat again and pulls out a taser to take Ranka out, but Ranka bites it in two and shows up behind Pan. When Pan begs for mercy, Ranka threatens to bite her in two if she ever messes with any of her packmates. Pan then flatlines, leaving Ranka to run ahead and win the race. At the award ceremony, Ranka bags first place, but Kuro looks sad. However, when her donkeys announce that the cooking club will lend them a part of their room, Kuro cries and thanks them. Ranka then announces that the club is officially recognized as a pack and hides it with the rest of her other junk. Some days later, the students prepare to welcome a special visitor and have to pick paper to decide what kind of decorations they'll be handling. While everyone else picks something easy, Ranka's cursed fingers pick something super hard. In the end, it's Jin who ends up doing the manual labor by himself. Later, a red limo pulls up, and the students begin to cheer as one of the rarest species comes out, the panda girl Mei. After, they end up at the principal's office where her manager, Feng, explains that he'll be determining whether she'll be enrolled in the school. The principal offered Mei some bamboo leaves, but she threw a tantrum when she saw it was not the expensive type she liked and started to leave. Feng immediately places a call to airlift the special leaves for Mei and tells the school they'll have to cover the cost. Gigasu figures this would be a troublesome student since she's already been spoiled by her home country. After, Mickey is tasked with being Mei's tour guide, so Mei demands she do something funny first, or she's leaving. With no other choice, she tells her mole rats to do the thing, and they rip off her school uniform. But only Feng enjoys the view while Mei is already gone. She decides to look around by herself when she runs into King and asks what he's doing there. King says he was contemplating cutting his mane, but since Shiho rejected him, he wasn't sure, so Mei cuts it for him and runs off to use it as a disguise. Suddenly, she smells something divine, and it turns out to be Jin's panda dumplings in the cooking club. Hitomi wonders if Mei will choose to stay in their school, so Ranka points out the hot spring they made for her just to join. Suddenly, Mei shows up and starts eating all the dumplings while they all wonder who the little glutton is. Komori almost ends her life and eardrums with a banshee scream, but Mei casually insists that Jin make her some more. When Jin scolds her, Mei remembers her disguise and reveals that she's the panda. The girls figure she followed the smell of the panda dumplings, so Mei expects to get the usual panda treatment and asks for some more dumplings. However, Jin calls her a stupid panda and refuses to budge. Mei gets mad and demands more, so Jin literally throws her outside and shuts the door in her face. Mei threatens to have Jin executed when Feng runs up and asks what's wrong, but Mei can't figure out why Jin won't do her bidding. The next day, Jin refuses Mei again, so Feng warns that Jin would be executed for causing a panda stress back in his country, but Jin says he doesn't care. Ranka then explains that they all decide what they cook together, so Mei gets an idea. Later, Komori receives legendary delicacy which is actually dried bat poop and gets bought over by Mei. Next, Miyubai receives a scooter that makes it easy to get around and gets bought over too. Ranka agrees when they offer to have all of Mei's fans join her pack, and they all eventually convince Jin to make the panda dumplings. Jin isn't surprised Mei bought them off, but even Hitomi had been bought by an expensive silk apron. At this, Jin caves but insists that Mei has to help too. Mei gets to work, but when Jin keeps bossing her around, she insists she won't do it anymore and throws her dough on the floor. Jin immediately tells her to pick the food up and stops Feng when he tries to help her. So Mei has no choice but to clean up her mess, which is surprisingly starting to turn her on. However, she turns off when Jin viciously tells her to keep her hands moving. Several minutes later, Mei finishes with the dumplings, and they all applaud her for getting it done. Mei runs to a corner to hoard it for herself, and when she tastes it, Jin tells her that it probably tastes better than the day before. At this, Ranka asks if Mei wants to join the club, but Feng interrupts and says he hasn't decided if she's even enrolling. Ranka assures him Jin is always nice, but Jin says they don't need a selfish panda. Mei asks what she'd have to do to get into the club, so Jin shuts Ranka's mouth and says she'd need to get all the current members to agree to it, and there's one more member of the club. The next day, Mei arrives at school, deciding to enroll full-time. When she goes in, she wonders who the last member of the club is, but figures it'll be fine since she's a panda. However, when she opens the door, Sora freaks out and hides under a cupboard. Mei tries to introduce herself, but Sora hisses at her, so Jin explains that house cats aren't quick to accept newcomers. It's either they run the panda out or prioritize Sora, who was there first. At this, Jin jails Mei, and Sora goes back to normal and sits with the rest of the club. But when Hitomi tries to talk about Mei, Sora closes off again. Mei remains in the same state while the rest of the girls clean up for the day. Jin then advises Mei to give up. but she insists she's not going anywhere till Sora accepts her. At this, the club has no choice but to dump Mei by herself overnight in the cage. Suddenly, Mei notices Sora come in with glowing green eyes, which she calls pretty. Mei then says that she doesn't plan to leave the cooking club even if Sora doesn't accept her, because it's the most fun she's ever had, even though she never lacked anything. Hearing this, Sora remembers that she also got people's admiration, but it never felt the same as when she joined the cooking club. At this, Sora runs out of the club toward Jin's room. The next morning, Mei wakes up with a blanket on top of her and a rat outside her cage, so she figures Sora must have left it there as a gift. Just then, Fong and the others join her, and she explains that Sora has given her approval, but no one believes her till Sora jumps in the window and goes right up to Mei to snuggle her. Mei then thanks her for the rat, but Sora smiles and runs off, leaving her confused. However, Jin explains that it's how cats show affection, so Hitomi welcomes her to the club. Ranka then tells her that she has to lick the boss as a sign that they're packmates, but Mei ends up licking Jin instead. When Ranka explains that she meant herself, Mei blames Jin for deceiving her somehow. Later, the girls soak off in the hot spring Jin built, so Ranka wonders how Mei didn't get a cold, till she reveals she had a blanket. Meanwhile, Jin nurses a cold and quickly reaches for the same blanket. Some days later, Yina's dad and brother ask how she's taking being a female, so she insists that nothing has changed. They then tell her it's fine to be herself even if she's not like a female, and Yina realizes she doesn't even know what it's like to be female. Later at school, Yina takes out some apex predators and continues to wonder why she doesn't feel like a female. At this, she figures she needs someone to imitate when Hitomi walks up and offers her a handkerchief which reeks of femininity. Meanwhile, Feral continues to watch Ranka from the shadows, admiring how cute she is, when a little honey badger shows up and asks to join her pack. She introduces herself as Animitsu, the one Feral saved the other day when she shoved a bear into the wall. Animitsu says she wants to become strong like Feral and begs to join the pack, but they explain that she's not a wolf. Animitsu then points out Yina and asks if she's part of Feral's pack, but Yina says she's only observing Hitomi and learning what it means to be female. When Yina asks who the little runt is, she says she's a member of Feral's pack, but the wolves explain that they only allow one female in the pack. Animitsu offers to be Feral's little sister, but when Feral says she only needs Ranka, Animitsu promises to defeat her and take her place. She then runs after Ranka, but before she catches up, a bird distracts her and leads her away. Meanwhile, Yina stalks Hitomi in a trash can and observes how she eats her lunch like an actual princess. After, she joins Hitomi with her plate of bones and tries to recreate the magic, but when she asks Hitomi how she did, Hitomi tells her she was herself. Yina insists on being the kind of female who makes you roll your eyes in annoyance, so Hitomi suggests she talk to the others in the cooking club. After this, they head to the club, and Jin gets jealous that Yina is spending time with Hitomi. Mei asks what Yina's deal is, so Kuromi tells her she's a female with a glizzy, which explodes Mei's as she goes to look at it. Jin tells Yina she can't be like Hitomi, but when she argues, he points out that Hitomi doesn't sound vulgar, look dirty, or sit like a guy. At this, Yina accuses Jin of being a stalker since he knows too much, so Kuromi randomly suggests that Hitomi pretend to be like Yina. The girls then team up to change Hitomi's appearance, but she ends up being even more dazzling. They all get nosebleeds, and Miyubi dies. Just then, Animitsu shows up and asks Ranka to fight her, but Ranka hides behind Jin and says she doesn't want to. At this, Yina grabs the little runt and throws her outside, where the wolf tells her to leave Ranka alone. Suddenly, the honey guide shows up, and since it tends to lead honey badgers to sources of honey, Animitsu runs off to chase it. Meanwhile, Jin insisted Yina could never pull Hitomi off, but Yina promised to prove him wrong. Hitomi gradually began working on herself, and by some miracle, she actually started acting like a female. Later at home, Yina tells her family that one of her friends has been teaching her how to behave like a female, so they go crazy telling her how much of a good thing it is. The next day, Yina attempts to eat just like Hitomi, and when she nails it, even Jin has to admit she's looking the part now. Hitomi congratulates her for finally becoming a girly girl, so Yina suggests they go pick some flowers. Suddenly, she stops and gets embarrassed as she regurgitates the indigestible parts of the bones. Jin instantly points out how unladylike it is, but Yina insists she can't help it since it's her biology. When she breaks down crying that she'll never be a true female, Mei suggests she just be a tomboy instead. She explains that pandas are actually carnivores, but they eat bamboo because they like to, and there's nothing wrong with doing what you like. Just then, Animitsu shows up, followed by a lion who asks what Yina is doing with a bunch of sisses. They then threaten to hurt Animitsu if Yina makes any sudden moves. At this, Jin tells Yina to go back to being male since the club can't handle lions. Meanwhile, the lions start pummeling Animitsu, and the girls start crying out for Jin to do something. But Jin knows Animitsu is actually fine cause honey badgers have thick pelts that can't easily be penetrated. When the lions are unable to put a dent in her, Yina shows up and one punches the idiot lions away as she returns to her factory settings as a male. After, Animitsu continues to pester Ranka to fight, but Ranka refuses since she doesn't see a reason why. Yina suggests Animitsu fight her first as a way to repay the club's favor, so Animitsu agrees. When the match begins, Animitsu gets on her hands and releases a stink bomb from her tail that repels Yina, but the wind suddenly changes and blows it toward Jin and Ranka, who collapse from the stench, leaving Animitsu the winner. Suddenly, Feral shows up furious about Animitsu attacking Ranka, so she slams her into the ground and creates a crater in the ground. As Feral runs to Ranka's side, Animitsu rejoices that she has finally felt pain for the first time. She then runs to Ranka and says she couldn't recognize her boss's little sister, but thanks her for helping her join Feral's pack. At this, Feral tries to separate her head from her body till Ranka praises her for letting another animal join her pack. Feral then changes her story and calls Animitsu a precious member of the pack. Meanwhile, Yina heads off, finally knowing who she is. Back at home, her family picks out girly dresses for Yina to try when she busts in to announce that she's back to being a male and runs off again. The next day, Yina sits beside Hitomi and thanks her for all her help. But when she starts to get too comfortable, Jin threatens to murder her if she doesn't back off. Some days later, the students head on a field trip to the sea, but Ranka continues to annoy Jin as usual. They arrive at the school's sea branch, where the principal is also a useless casualty of larger animals. After, they head inside where they see the students' uniforms are all swimsuits, the classrooms are in the ocean, and their dorms are on a boat. Jin continues to be bitter since they're all animals, but he figures the scenery would make the perfect chance to get closer to Hitomi. Just then, a whale girl named Kana shows up to greet the students with a special presentation. However, when she tries to execute it by herself, she fails, gives up, and swims away. Ranka wonders what happened, so Hitomi says that the guide only mentions a synchronized swimming club. Ranka then wonders if Kana was all alone and depressed, making Jin realize she's about to make it their problem. However, he figures that if he sends her to help Kana, it would be easier to get alone time with Hitomi, so he gives Ranka a pep talk about how Kana needs a boss and sends her off running to save the day. Thankfully, Mei decides to go too, and Jin is happy to get rid of her. Moments later, Ranka offers to have Mei teach her the secrets of putting on a show. Unfortunately, when she asks Feng to bring her attire, she just demonstrates the unimpressive garbage she typically does as a panda. Kana then points out that their synchronized swimming club is really good. When Ranka asks about them, Kana says that they're the school idols and she wishes she could swim with them, but they won't let her join. Suddenly, the captain of the swimming club, Bando, shows up. Meanwhile, Jin checks the school guide with Hitomi and realizes all the locations are too far for humans to reach quickly. Hitomi then points out that she's curious about what Ranka is doing, and when the others agree, they decide to head back and find out. Meanwhile, Ranka asks why Bando won't let Kana join the club, so she explains that whales can't keep up with dolphins, so she can't allow Kana to ruin their show. When Kana smiles at her, Bando gets mad, but beluga whales always look like they're smiling, but Bando swims off angrily. After, Ranka tells Kana she doesn't need the mean girls and can be in a show with them instead. However, Kana tells them she still wants to join the swimming club because she was so moved the first time she saw their show that she spouted water from her blowhole. Just then, Jin shows up with the girls who want to help out, so Jin suggests Kana use her own talent, which is singing. Jin tells them that the beluga whale's nickname is the Canary of the Sea, so she can show her talent without having to jump around. Ranka suggests they do their own show and assures Kana that when Bando sees how well she does, she'll have no choice but to let her join. Later, Jin looks pleased as he watches Hitomi in her swimsuit, so he commends Ranka on finally doing a good job. The girls then head into the water to practice, when Jin realizes that he'll never get free time with Hitomi at this rate. Meanwhile, the girls decide to swim around Kana as she sings. but Kana ends up releasing a death cry that almost bursts their eardrums and ends their lives, except Miyubai, who actually dies again. That night, the male animals go wild while Jin curses the day he was born. His roommates turned out to be a male couple, but when one of them insists he never sleeps with the same man twice, the partner figures there's another man and cries over his heartbreak. Jin takes a break outside the room when Bando walks up to him and begs him to stop Kana. Just then, her friends run up to get her while Jin wonders why she seems completely different than before. The girls explain that they sleep with half of their brains, so when Banda's mean girl half is asleep, her personality changes. Crybaby Bando tells Jin that even if Kana masters her singing, whales and dolphins are different species, so they can't possibly be in sync. She then bends over to beg and ends up falling asleep. When she wakes up as mean girl Bando, she demands that Jin stop Kana and walks off with the girls. Later, Jin soaks off in the male bath when his giraffe roommate shows up and asks to wash his back. Suddenly, his giraffe sister pops up to tell Jin that her brother is even willing to be a bottom. The giraffe confesses that he feels like Hisoka whenever he looks at Jin, so Jin takes it as a cue to run for his life. After, he finds Renka still trying to help Kana, who says she doesn't understand how singing could be her talent. However, Renka begs Kana to trust Jin since they were able to form a club made of different species and even won their school's field day. Kana is surprised by how much Renka trusts Jin, but when she starts calling him her husband, Jin tells her to shut up. He then tells Kana she's not supposed to sing with her throat, but with her melon, just like dolphins. He explains that beluga whales are the only kind that can change their melons, so Renka assures Kana that she can do it, and she promises to give it a try. On the day of the seaside finale, Kana sees the crowd and insists she can't do it, but Renka gives her a pep talk to encourage her. In a few moments, the girls enter the water to start the show. Bando and the girls are unimpressed, and when Kana doesn't show, they figure she ran off. However, Kana suddenly stands on the water and begins to sing with her melon, shocking the crowd. The swim club is surprised by how good she is, but figures the rest of the show was still very bad, so they plan to head in till it's their turn. Suddenly, Bando feels a strange excitement in her melon, and her other half wakes up and says she wants to swim. Bando insists that their species don't sink, but her other half says it almost feels like she's calling them. At this, the two halves decide to make their feelings the same and join Kana in the water. As Kana continues to use her melon, Bando is surprised that she's actually synchronizing with her movements more and more. Eventually, the other girls join and admit that the song made them want to swim, so they all swim together as Kana pushes the limit of her melon to make Bando jump as high as possible, shocking the crowd as she sticks the landing with a huge splash. After, Bando tells Kana they can now create a show no one's ever seen before and asks Kana to join her, so Kana accepts, and the girls congratulate her. Later, Kana thanks the cooking club as the Land Academy heads back home. Later, Jin finally gets a few minutes alone with Hitomi, but when he tries to confess to her, he finds the boy-loving giraffe there and runs for his life. The next day, Jin tries to carry Miyubai to her room, but when Meimei and Renka jump on too, he throws them all off and ditches them. After, Meimei notices a girl named Minako peeping and runs to ask if she's a fan, but the weirdo immediately starts bashing her head against the wall till she dies. Later, they tell Jin about it, so he explains that she must be a tarsier, and they tend to unsubscribe from life when they're stressed. When Meimei asks what could have stressed her, Jin explains that Meimei's mere presence is enough to cause stress. Later, during their life-threatening gym class, Meimei and Miyubai sit the activity out so they don't die. However, when Miyubai says she'd like to run with everyone someday, Meimei drags her along to try it when she suddenly notices Minako again. She decides to prove Jin wrong and tries to approach her, but when she gives off excess cuteness, Minako jumps high in the air, lands on her head, and dies. Miyubai then says she always dies when she doesn't want to, so she understands how Minako must feel, but she'd also die before she could help her. At this, Meimei offers to help Miyubai help the nut job, just so she can prove Jin wrong. Later, Meimei tries to get close to the girl, but she starts bashing. After they tried showing her a panda magazine, instant death. Even using a makeshift telephone sent her into bash mode, and she even took Miyubai down with her. Eventually, Meimei and Miyubai introduced Minako to the cooking club. Renko tries to say hi, but Minako starts bashing and dies. At this, Meimei explains that Minako dies when strangers talk to her, so she tells them not to make eye contact. She then brags that she didn't die because Meimei causes stress, but now she's friends with her. The group gives Meimei messages to tell Monako that she's welcome, so Monako thanks them since they're being so nice. She gets so happy that she tries to off herself, but Miyubai saves her at the last minute. Miyubai then slaps her in slow motion and tells her not to let her instincts beat her. At this, Meimei gets excited and hugs them, making them both die. Meanwhile, King apologizes to Shiho for getting too excited in his pants, but when Shiho tells him she's finally in heat, King promises to make it quick.
Yeah, boy.
He excitedly drags her to the forest for 50 rounds of pounding, but Shiho tells him she wants him to meet her parents first. Later, a typhoon rolls in, so the mole rats warn Mickey that they should get above ground, but she's too distracted wondering if she should step down as president when a flood busts in and sweeps them away. Later, one of the teachers tells the students that the student council and underground dorms have been flooded, so they'll all have to share their rooms. However, when Jin tries to refuse, the teacher threatens to skewer him and ends the conversation. Later, Hitomi's roommate finds her, and as they head to the room, she asks if it's true humans are always in heat. As for Jin, he promises to make whoever his new roommate is regret entering his room, so the girls plan to check on him later. That evening, Jin is shocked to find Mickey in his room without clothes on and immediately calls her a creep. Mickey insists that Jin couldn't be more indecent from their point of view. She then asks him if he'd like to be student council president. Jin asks why, so she recalls the field day and seaside presentation where he got different species to work together. He even helped other people build interspecies relations, and the school has been in a brighter mood ever since. At this, Mickey figures out that what the students want is what Jin is already doing. At that moment, Jin imagines walking to school with Hitomi and revealing that, as council president, he used his power to send all the animals back to the forest so it could just be the two of them. If Ranka ever showed up, he'd just hand her a bone and send her running back to the wild, which would make Hitomi even more in love with him. When Mickey hears his dream school, she tells him he can't use the dignified power of the president for personal gain, but Jin tells her she's one to talk about dignity. At this, Jin demands that she wear her clothes in front of him, so Mickey has no choice but to suffer the embarrassment of wearing her clothes. After Mickey changes her mind about making him president when they hear a ruckus outside. There, they find several students who say they barely get to talk to Mickey when she's underground. The mole rats encourage Mickey to help them, so Mickey announces that she'll meet with each student one by one and heads in with the first. When Jin laments that it's his room, the animals push him out of the way and continue to meet with Mickey till the very last student leaves. After, Mickey apologizes for the inconvenience, but worries that she still doesn't agree with interspecies relations. At this, Jin points out that she spoke to each animal individually, so she's the one engaging in the most interspecies relations. When Mickey realizes she doesn't have to give up being president, she gets so happy that she strips off all her clothes, even her underwear. Jin immediately tries to cover her when the girls walk in and can't believe their eyes. Later, Mickey apologizes to the girls for causing trouble, so they tell her it's okay if she wants to take off her clothes. Mickey agrees and asks for a favor, so she gets them to strip too. When Meimei looks at the milkers on the girl, she quickly pulls Ranka to stay close and make her feel better. Meanwhile, a strange girl named Anne arrives with a clump of meat looking for humans. After Anne meets with the principal about enrolling in their school, so he tells her it's the perfect time since their festival is coming up soon. When she asks about the humans in the school, they tell her about Jin and Hitomi from the cooking club. Later, Anne searches for the cooking club when she spots Jin and Ranka being chased by a mob of thirsty dogs, so she stops to take them on. After, she heads to the cooking club and asks to join, but they get the shock of their lives when she says she's human too. Hitomi gets happy since she's never met another human girl before, so she grabs her hand and says it's nice to meet her, and asks if those were all the members, so Hitomi explains that there are two others, but Ranka just went into heat. Hitomi explains that Ranka was supposed to be staying indoors till the end of her cycle, but the idiot decided to step out for a bit and polluted the school with her pheromones, causing a mob of canines to start chasing her through school. She then hid behind Jin to avoid getting mounted, and now they're running for their lives. At this, Anne realizes that the male she passed was a human, so she tells them they don't need to be worried anymore since she took care of it. Meanwhile, Jin realizes that they managed to lose the mutts, so he looks for a place to hide when someone quickly calls him into a strange shed. However, when he gets inside, he finds his giraffe admirer, urging him to talk about love in bed with him. The sister is also there, begging her big bro to make it count, so Jin runs for his life yet again. Jin finally arrives at Ranka's dorm, where he takes off his jacket from the heat. But since Ranka is still in heat, she starts whining as she jumps on top of him. Meanwhile, the cooking club wonders if Jin and Ranka were making babies, but Hitomi doubts the idea. Mei wonders what it's like to be in heat since pandas are so bad at getting freaky that they have to show them how to do it. Back in the dorm, Ranka asks to do stuff with Jin, but it's just the usual licking. Jin quickly punches her off him, so Ranka asks if he hates her or something. Jin immediately tells her he hates her and all animals, causing Ranka to cry while Jin abandons her in her room. Back at the club, the team makes several delicious meals, but she finishes them in the blink of an eye and laments that there wasn't enough. At this, Komori suggests they run an all-you-can-eat buffet for the school festival, and they all go with the idea. Just then, Jin shows up and asks who the new animal is, but when Hitomi introduces her as another human girl, Jin starts being extra nice to her. Hitomi suggests they close the club early and clean up, so Jin goes on dishwashing duty. But when he remembers Ranka's sad face, he starts to wash the plate like it owes him money. After school, Anne approaches Jin and tells him she's very interested in him, so Jin takes it the wrong way and tells her that he can't return her feelings because Hitomi is the only one for him. However, this leaves Anne mad since that's not what she meant. Later, Hitomi asks Anne to spend some time together, and Anne thinks it's perfect for her plan. They head to the hot springs together, but Anne can't stop staring at human milkers because they remain big, even when the factory is not open for business. Hitomi tries asking Anne several questions, but all Anne cares about is food, specifically meat. Suddenly, she collapses in the water while his stomach growls loudly. Later, Hitomi serves Anne some meat back in her room, but when she notices how late it has gotten, she suggests Anne spend the night. That night, Anne asks why Hitomi is being so nice to her, so Hitomi says she wants them to be friends and tells her good night. Anne starts to think humans might be more complex than she thought, so she decides to investigate them further, starting with learning what Hitomi's chest feels like. Meanwhile, Ranka is still upset about Jin's comment, but when she spots his jacket, she can't help but run to his scent. She then decides to take a walk when she spots a dog at a vending machine, so she hides before she gets spread out on all fours. Suddenly, Ranka starts smelling something heavenly and follows the scent till she finds Anne roasting more meat, and offers her some meat, so they sit and talk about Ranka's relationship with Jin, but Ranka laments that Jin hates her. At this, Anne tells her to break up with him because humans are liars who can't be trusted. She insists that several animals have gone extinct because of humans, but Ranka says Jin isn't like that. She then remembers she's his boss and plans to ask him why he hates her. Though Anne thinks she's deluded, she hopes Ranka's plan will help to break up the human group. The next day, Ranka asks why Jin hates her, believing that he isn't one of the cruel liars she heard about. However, Jin tells her he's exactly like that, so she shouldn't go around believing anything he says. When Ranka wonders what that means, Hitomi whispers that Jin was lying about hating her. Ranka happily jumps on Jin to lick him, and so Mei encourages them to make some babies. Just then, Hitomi notices Anne outside and asks her to come in, but Ranka jumps outside to lick her where she is and let her join her pack. After hearing this, Anne says she remembers something she has to do and promises to come back in time for the festival. She then returns to her real academy, where a group of hidden animals remind her that humans are the enemy of the Extinct Species Alliance. Just then, the leader of the group shows up and asks Anne if they'll be able to lead the humans to extinction, so Anne assures them there's a chance to. Days later, Anne shows up for the school's festival where the animals set up booths with different games and attractions. Mickey is relieved everyone is having wholesome fun till she spots an attraction of cows offering to let people milk them. Meanwhile, King keeps losing at a shooting game and winning marbles, realizing he shouldn't have made the lionesses do all the work. Meanwhile, the cooking club is hard at work preparing for their buffet, so Jin plans to show Hitomi how great he is at all the attractions. Just then, Komori walks in with some sort of biohazard ingredient, and they all worry for their safety when Anne walks in. Hitomi and Ranka rush to greet her and suggest she help with the club, so Anne agrees if it's okay with them. Ranka asks Jin if it's fine, so Jin keeps thinking she wants him and agrees to it, but Anne wishes she could make him extinct immediately. Just then, Yina shows up to help Hitomi too, when she asks who the pale girl is, and feels threatened by Yina, and they stare each other down, but Hitomi breaks it up and dresses them. Once all the ingredients are ready, they officially open the restaurant for business, so a huge crowd of animals line up to get in while Jin does his best to serve all the food on time. The animals all go crazy over the delicious meals, while Panda stuffs her face with dumplings while Miyubai serves her. However, Jin shows up and tells her to get to work, or he'll feed her to the animals. Meanwhile, Yina tries to serve some tigers, but when they complain about the wait time, she punches them out of the room for annoying her. Soon enough, their entire restaurant is sold out, so Hitomi hugs Anne to thank her, and Ranka jumps in uninvited. When she tries to jump, Yina too, she dodges and puts her arm around Hitomi instead, making him mad. After Jin tells the girls to clean up and prepare the ingredients for the next day, Soen sees this as her chance and offers to go with Hitomi. Yina asks to go along too, but Anne insists that they don't need her to. Yina objects and explains that she's closer to Hitomi, but encounters and says they bathed and slept together. At this, Ranka interrupts and tells the girls not to fight. She then forces them to shake hands, and Yina notices something off about Anne. Hitomi asks Yina to go to the cafeteria instead, so Yina agrees but watches Anne closely now that she knows what Anne is. Meanwhile, the extinct species show up, made up of Atlas, Yang, Washima, and Andrew. However, before they can even enter the festival, they start arguing among each other like idiots, showing how they went extinct in the first place. Meanwhile, Hitomi asks Anne to get along with Yina and offers her a hair clip that would look good on her. Suddenly, Anne says she's been feeling something inside of her ever since she spent the night with Hitomi, so Hitomi says she understands the feeling, which must be one that comes from the happiness of laughing and talking with others. She hugs Anne and tells her she's not alone anymore. Then she adds the clip and says they're the same now. However, Anne thinks she's only saying this because she thinks she's human, so she strikes Hitomi on the back and knocks her out. As Anne wheels her away, Yina shows up and accuses her of not really being human as they face off. Meanwhile, Andrew searches for humans but can't tell what they are since he's never seen one. He then spots Animitsu and asks if she's a human or he'll rip her in half. Animitsu quickly calls for Feral, who shows up and asks what he wants. Andrew tries to lie himself out of it when Animitsu rats him out, causing Feral to knock him to the moon. Back at the club, Komori tells the girls she's cooking something special that she got from the rabbits. But when she opens the toxic waste excitedly, Miyubai dies on the spot. Suddenly, Yang shows up and says Komori's pot looks delicious, so Komori offers to serve her some. Komori serves all three of them the waste, and Yang thinks her plan to befriend them is working, so she starts gobbling down the poison. Apparently, her particular species of dolphins lost their sense of smell because they didn't need it, and now she thinks she's eating the most delicious thing she's ever tried. Meanwhile, Jin starts searching for Anne and Hitomi when the idiot wonders if they had gotten into a fight over him. He then imagines their fight somehow becoming devoid of clothes or violence. Just then, Atlas grabs Jin and says that it was foolish to leave his pride. He then explains that he's a Barbary lion who went extinct thanks to humans, so he wants revenge. But before he can strike Jin, King shows up and rescues him with that bald head. King tells Atlas he won't let him harm his savior, so Atlas gets enraged and calls him a disgrace to all lions as he punches him away. When Shiho rushes to King's side, Atlas can't believe he's mated with an impala and calls him a pathetic lion. However, when Shiho tries to defend him, Atlas slaps her, mute, wondering how she has the nerve. After seeing this, King starts to go Super Saiyan and immediately grows back his mane. He then charges at Atlas and pushes him back, so Atlas asks why he went bald if he had all that strength. In response, King says it was all for love, but Atlas promises to show him the hatred of an extinct species when Jin bursts his bubble and tells him his kind aren't extinct. Atlas is glad to hear the news, but King smacks him till he bleeds. After, Atlas reveals that Anne has probably taken Hitomi and joined up with the rest of his colleagues. Meanwhile, Yang finishes her meal and feels like she finally has a reason to live, so she thanks Komori for helping her remember something precious. However, when she asks what the dish is, she explains that it came from the rabbits who were happy that someone was finally accepting of their disgusting biology. Komori reveals that the rabbits produced the finest poop around and Yang goes comatose. On the other hand, Washima goes around all the attractions, completely forgetting why he's here. Meanwhile, Anne manages to defeat Yina and is about to walk away when Yina tells her it's not over yet. Yina asks how she doesn't care about Hitomi getting hurt and asks if she was just pretending to be her friend. However, Anne insists that Yina can never understand what it's like to be driven to extinction and rushes to attack her. But this time Yina catches it with her teeth and breaks it. Suddenly, Ranka shows up and asks what's going on, so Yina fills her in. But Ranka says she doesn't believe it since Anne has such a sad smell. She then tells Ann not to continue her plan and asks to be friends instead. However, a deep voice fills their head, and the ground shakes as the final boss arrives. But it turns out to be a woolly mammoth girl named Man. Man tells Ann to capture the humans, and Ann is about to do it till Ranka tells her to stop since she's her boss. However, Man reveals that she's actually Ann's real boss, and Ann admits to it. Just then, Jin runs up with King and Shiho, and when Jin takes a second look at Ann, he realizes she's a Neanderthal who went extinct after losing in power struggles to modern humans. Ranka tells Jin about the mammoth, but when Jin calls her tiny, she gets mad and plans to eliminate them himself. King tries to stop her cute body when she lifts him with one hand, lifts Yina with the other, and slams them both. Jin then starts to panic when Ranka jumps in front of him to protect him since she's his boss. Jin knows she stands no chance and looks for a way to stall her, so he suggests they take the fight to a boxing ring, and if he can beat Ranka, she can do what she wants with him. Man refuses the offer, so Jin borrows Shiho's marbles and throws them on the floor, which scares Man because elephants don't like any injury to their feet. Man rushes to gather them, but Jin shows there's more where it came from and forces her to accept his proposal, and reminds Man that they have a hostage and are likely to win, so Man accepts the challenge to face Ranka. Later, the students gather around the ring while Kuro acts as the referee, unsurprisingly. Meanwhile, Jin tells Ranka that he chose boxing because Man seems slow, but he suggests they call it off if she wants. However, when Ranka insists that she'll protect her pack as a boss, Jin tells her to use her speed to confuse Man. On the other hand, Hitomi tries to get Man to stop the war, but Man says humans started it first. When Ann asked why they were dressed weirdly, Man said it was the kangaroo's conditions for borrowing the ring. Just then, Ann remembers when she was eating her meat and first met Man. After, they continued to bump into each other till Man approached her and asked why her kind went extinct. When Ann blamed the humans, Man could relate, so she asked Ann if she would join her group to make the humans extinct. Ann agreed to the offer, and they both recruited others with the same goal. In the present, Man and Ranka head to the gym when Feral shows up and tells Jin to swap her with Ranka. However, Ranka tells her she won't let her, so Jin figures she should relate to her pride and asks her to shut up and watch. Hearing this, Feral chose to cheer Ranka on instead. At this, the match begins, and Ranka starts running circles around Man. But when Man tries to hit her and dents the ring, Ranka starts to fear for her life if she gets caught. Ranka then gets cornered, and everyone tries to tell her what to do, but she gets overwhelmed and ends up taking a hit in round 1. During break time, Jin tells Ranka that Man clearly doesn't have too much stamina, but at the same time, Ann advises Man not to chase Ranka around blindly. When round 2 begins, the girls dress up in questionable outfits as ring card girls, and Hitomi's outfit is so hot, Jin collapses from the visuals. Before the fight, Hitomi says she's still holding out hope since they already became friends, but Ann insists she'd change her mind about her once she knows the truth. However, Hitomi says she already knows she's a Neanderthal, but it doesn't change the fact that she's Ann. Meanwhile, as Ranka tries to keep her distance from Man, Man starts to taunt her about being a fake boss since she just keeps running away. When she tells Ranka she doesn't have what it takes to be a boss, Ranka falls for it and charges in, causing her to get knocked out of the ring, but somehow, Ranka manages to stand up before the countdown ends. The match goes on break, and Ann tries to talk Man out of it, so she figures Hitomi must have said something, and reminds her that humans are liars. Meanwhile, Jin tries to get Ranka to quit, but when she promises to win, Jin grabs him and pats her on the head for support. Ranka immediately receives a boost of energy from the praise and goes into round 3. Man tries to strike first but suddenly gets tired, giving Ranka an opening, but when Ranka falls for it, Man looks up and punches her in the gut, sending her flying out of the ring. However, Miyubai tells Ranka not to give up, and the rest of the school cheers her on, so Ranka wakes up and returns to the ring with new energy. Man tries to put her down for good, but Ranka continues to evade her and tire her out, and insists Man doesn't need to do this, but a Man says that they're friends because of their common goal of hating humans. When Man refuses to listen, and says she's leaving Man's team and will not be her friend anymore. Ranka uses the opportunity to tell Man that she's failed as a boss and finally lands a punch, though it doesn't do anything. However, the emotional damage takes Man down for long enough time for Ranka to win the match. After they congratulate Ranka, Hitomi offers to treat Man's wounds since the fight is over and they don't need to be enemies. and explains that humans have a kind side to them too, so Man figures that's why she chose to be in a pack with Hitomi. However, Ranka says she has to punish En for betraying her and kicks her out of the group, so En uses the opportunity to ask if she can return to her pack. Man thinks they've lost their common goal, so Jin explains that they don't need a common enemy and can just want to be friends. At this, Man tears up and jumps into En's hands to accept her offer. Just then, Washimo shows up to avenge the boss but slips on a marble and goes extinct. After Jin tells Ranka that she finally looked like a boss, so Ranka starts to lick him. But he doesn't resist because Ranka gave him a glimpse at something amazing, an X-rated outfit on Hitomi. Later, the extinct species join the cooking club to make something together and finally put the hatred behind them. Afterward, En apologizes to Hitomi, but Hitomi tells her that they can always get past their differences regardless of their species, so she hopes to continue their friendship. However, Yina steals En's hug and inserts herself as the annoying third wheel. Afterward, they wave goodbye to the extinct club while they remain proud members of their own Seton Academy. When they return inside, Ranka goes right back to imagining Jin as her husband and attacking him with love. However, King shows up in rags and bruises and reports that they have a new problem on their hands, a rival academy. If you want a part 2, comment Hitomi's milk. And if you like anime recaps like this, then watch this video right here.